flies like a bird. They flee.
Welcome back to another episode of Radiant Others. That's what happens to Radiant Others when we record and put out 3 episodes in a row with guests whose names start with A. All terrible jokes aside, today on Radiant Others, we're finishing off our unofficial and unintended trilogy of A's with my talk with guitarist, singer-songwriter, and more Avi Fox-Rosen. Avi is someone I've known for a really long time. We had his brother, Benji Fox-Rosen, on a bunch of episodes ago, and I met Avi kind of through Benji, because Benji was getting into Yiddish music and then dragged his brother along to play in his bands and dragged me along to play in his bands and all this kind of stuff. And we just started playing together, and we're always around. And Adrienne Cooper dragged both of us to play with her, and that was a really long time ago. So fast forward, it's 2026, and Avi Fox-Rosen has put out a new record, a new album, Die Reise Heim, The Journey Home, which is a setting of the poem of that name by Irina Klepfish. And if you don't know who Irina is, just stop and look her up on Wikipedia. We get into it in the episode. I'm not going to summarize it now, but she's incredible. This poem is awesome, and this album is really, really, really cool because it's Avi's really interesting settings, rocking, cool settings with a really great band, including Alicia Spiegels and my old college roommate drummer Jason Nazary, who's so good, and also Irina reading each section of her poem before the musical setting of that same text. And it is an incredible dialogue between music and text that I've never really heard before, because Irina's voice is still so vital and yet so connected to big parts of our past, our Yiddish cultural past, her own personal story that at least resonate, that kind of knock our hearts like a gong. And that's what I think a lot of the music and the experience of listening to this album is like. It's being like knocked as if you were a gong, and then you ring and you see what happens. So we get to talk about that. We get to talk about being parents. We get to talk about, all the usual political crap that's going on. And Avi's been doing a lot of great work on that front, too. He's been involved with Jews for Racial and Economic Justice in New York, the enviable political organizing and cultural organizing organization that so many of my friends in this Yiddish scene are connected to. And they just released a J-Fridge songbook, which Avi was involved with, and a lot of really cool people, including Jenny Romaine. And yeah, Ira Temple's done tons of work with J-Fridge. So the family is tight, the family is strong, and we're diving in and really trying to get into some stuff for this conversation. That's what we do. If you like what you hear here, check out all our episodes. If you have listened to every episode, then I probably know your name. And even if I don't, thank you for listening. And for everybody who supports us monetarily, thank you so much. You could do that over at Patreon, Patreon, I think, .com/RadiantOthers, or at tiptopjar/RadiantOthers. You can always leave a 5-star review. If you can leave more stars, we'll take them. And other than that, let's dive into this episode with Avi. It's just really fun to talk to a buddy like this. Someone I've been in the trenches with. Another one this is really part of our Trenches series, unofficial. But that's enough for now. This is my conversation with Avi Fox-Rosen.
She settles auf a Bäum on a tree, live in my mind
Welcome to another episode of Radiant Others, and I'm so excited to have with me my dear friend Avi Fox-Rosen to talk about his new album, Die Reise Heim, out on Borscht Beat, because of course, and also we've got a lot of other things to talk about, because boy, have the two of us been through a lot of experiences in our musical lives.
Yeah, hi. Hey, Dan. What's up? Thanks for having me.
Hey, Avi, thanks for making some great music and also for being a dear friend for so many years.
So many.
You know, by the time people listen to this, we'll have just put out, I got to write a little piece sort of about the podcast and about where I hope we can go with the podcast for Ingeweb, the online Yiddish studies journal. And someone wrote, reposted it and was like, it's so, like, Hamish, it's such an easy conversation. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm like on, this podcast is on the most easy mode possible. 80% of the people who are on here are people where it's just like we're running, the conversation has already been going for
20 years.
20 years. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, God, this came up a little bit when I had your brother on a bunch of episodes ago, Benji Fox-Rosen. But my first encounter with the Fox-Rosens was through my college room neighbor. He wasn't my roommate, but he lived in the next room over, Noah Kaplan.
Yes, Wolf Wolverton.
Wolf Wolverton, who was an incredible saxophonist and has gone on to be, I don't actually know what he's up to, but he studied with Joe Maneri, who is an interesting character who's tangentially related to the klezmer revival, and also a microtonal composer, a teacher of Judith Berkson, who has been on the podcast. And then Noah was carrying on some of the legacy of Joe's microtonal saxophone playing, and also his interest in counterpoint. And then there's all these other connections that are great. But in the meantime, what was it, somewhere around like 2007, 2008, Benji got really psyched on doing Yiddish stuff. I think because of Judith. I remember the story that he told me was that he wanted Judith to sing a Yiddish song in his senior recital in undergrad, and she said, and she was a freelancer in New York at this point, she said, I will, but only if you sing a song in Yiddish too.
Oh, nice.
And
I'm not sure I knew that.
And then I have a CDR of that recital somewhere in my basement.
Were you on that?
No. I didn't even know. I don't even think I was really. I had met Benji, but I wasn't friends with you all yet. I remember it was a little bit later, and then Benji got the bug not only to do Yiddish but also tour his band of playing his Yiddish songs and old and new Yiddish songs all over, let's say, Eastern Central Europe, mostly Austria. And that was, I can think of, there are some memories clear as day.
Yes.
Bouncing around of that.
In a very small
days.
Car. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
not enough chairs, I think. There are not enough seats in some of those vans, although I might be conflating it with a Dan Kahn Sprinter.
Maybe. I remember having a seat. I remember getting in fights about who ate which chocolate in the car. That was the band chocolate.
The band chocolate. That's really good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, throughout all of this, before we jump in, when did you start getting connected to this whole like Jewish scene? Like, I know that you come from a very your mom's a rabbi, and like you come from a Jewish music world, but not a klezmer or Yiddish world. Like, was that stuff that Benji was excited about sort of also your foray into this?
Yeah, well, it took me a little longer. I think Benji found this world and immediately wanted to be singing in Yiddish. And for whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure why, I was very resistant to singing in Yiddish. I think I was trying to be a singer-songwriter in my own, of my own original material around that time.
I remember.
And I released a handful of albums, quite a few actually.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I was very, I really wanted to write my own words, and I didn't have a grasp of Yiddish language at that time. And I also, I don't know, maybe it's actually interesting. Maybe this is also some internalized anti-Semitism or something. It's like I wanted to present something that I thought would be like more universally available, or accessible. Maybe that's the word. So I loved. So around that time, 2006, 7, 8, like I started to get immersed in the klezmer world and met all sorts of wonderful people like yourself, Winograd, Adrian Cooper, and I loved being like a sort of, I guess, a side person in that scene and like learning the repertoire, but I didn't really claim it as my own. And I guess that's fair to say.
Yeah, and also like full perspective. In 2007, I was 23 and 24, and you're I think you're a few years older, but like maybe not even a few, but like we were young ass kids, who like, our idea of what might be universally appealing, for instance,
is pretty
we're just
wrong-headed.
doing our best, or just like, you're just doing your best, like. And so were you trying to be a freelance? I mean,
I came to New York to be to be a freelance creative musician, but which for me, so I didn't like, all right, I got into playing jazz in high school. Not because I actually understood what jazz is or anything of like, or any real, like I didn't really understand the social political history of jazz. I didn't really understand the music. I just sort of knew that like that fluency in jazz meant that you could play anything.
Right,
so
that's how it was presented, for sure.
Yeah, that's how it was presented, right? And whether or not it's true. So I was like, I want to be a jazz guitar player because I want to do anything and everything, and I want to be famous that way.
Listen, if you just play good, you get famous. That's what I was told.
That's why I went to college. Like, I'm going to go to college and learn how to play good, and then I'll be famous, and the rest of my life will just unfold.
That's right. Well,
and it worked just as I planned it.
That's the same. That's my story too. That's why I'm recording this podcast from my basement.
Right. Yeah. That's why I'm taking a little break from my day job to talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I mean, also totally. It's so funny about how, and it's like a whole different podcast about like how jazz was presented, how it relates to the the older millennial ideal of getting a college degree regardless of what you're about to do, how it has like this tradition that was sort of, I mean, the parallel to klezmer in a sense would be that jazz musicians themselves were also promoting this sort of weird history or like trajectory of the music that doesn't even conform to their own lives, let alone ours.
Yes.
And, certainly the music business and whatever it meant to be a musician. But on the other hand, from what I remember, you rolled in to the crew of people that I was becoming friends with or was already involved in, ready to play and able to really rip it.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's really interesting. Like I learned a lot of technique before I actually learned any real repertoires, before I really like internalized repertoire. And it's also like a really weird thing about my education, maybe our education, was like, this really I don't want to really go down this path too much, but like the upholding of this idea of like technique and perfection and like and skill on your instrument more so than like musicality or really knowing a folk music or a repertoire really, really well.
Yeah, it was like you should just connect to the instrument itself on some abstract level rather than actually connecting yourself and your as many parts of your being to
music
making. To music making. Yeah,
and your actual identity. Like
right. Let alone your actual identity, where you come from. And of course. There were people who did that naturally or did it because they grew up with a certain thing with a certain kind of connection through their parents and stuff. And, it always did feel like they were skipping grades, which is also false because I'll tell you what, 20 years later, it doesn't matter that much. It really doesn't. It's like I can tell you how many people, I'll just say like 2 years ago, I did this concert where I played a solo improv set, very weird, and everybody else there was 3 sets on the concert. It was down here in Philly, but everybody else was from New York, and everybody's at least 10 years younger than me, if not like 15 to 18 years younger than me. And they were all just jaw-droppingly stunning on their at playing music, at playing their music. And I was like, oh wow, these are like exactly the same kind of people who would have intimidated the ever-living crap out of me and made me feel so bad when I was their age because I couldn't do those things. And the funny thing is I still can't do those things, but now I just don't care anymore.
Yeah. Well, right. And there's actually something I want to say with music or in a community that I really feel part of. So it's like it doesn't, the fact that I can't necessarily tap over changes, it's like, who cares?
Well, and this was cool is in that situation also, they really responded to me, to what I was saying. And just having that sort of openness, it really was like, oh, right. Thank goodness somebody pushed me or somebody helped me notice what this was really all about. And, like you mentioned Adrienne Cooper as somebody who, not only... I remember at her memorial service, I forget, it was maybe Michael Wex, but somebody said she had this like uncanny ability of giving you a gig when you needed it. And that's true for me. She really it's really weird. I remember I was one February and I was like dead broke sometime around then when we met. And I was like, what am I going to do? And she just called and she's like, I have all these weird school concerts. Do you want to just come up to New York and play all of them? And I'm like, can I stay on your couch? She's like, yeah, And
That's
it was
great.
like, yeah. And, I was thinking about this because, the song Voltik Gehat Koyach or Peace in the Streets or whatever name you're giving it comes up a lot. And the only recording of it that's professionally produced that I know of is like Avi Fox-Rosen plus band. You know?
That was right. And that was on Adrian's last studio record, Enchanted, which that was a wonderful early experience, in this scene for me. Like, so I guess we got to bring up Michael Winograd. So around the time I met you, I think I met Michael a little bit earlier than that because we were both living in New York, and and Michael was a bit of a... I don't know that he still is in this. Well, no, of course he is. I was going to say Michael was like a bit of a klezmer proselytizer. He was like, he wanted to take these other young musicians with chops and be like, you should be in this scene and learn this repertoire. And I was very eager to be, to take any sort of like, to be welcomed into any scene was just great. So I jumped in, there are a few things that helped me to jump in, but definitely Michael's encouragement and it brought me in. But so around that time Michael was working with Adrian to develop the repertoire and arrangements for this what would become that record, and I just was very well placed at the time to play on that record, and that made a huge impact on me.
I mean, it still stands up, I will say.
It's a lovely record.
It's a lovely record. I recently sang one of the songs from there at a concert, the other Borscht song, the menu song, because it's just like, it's such a lovely song, and I think that was what, I mean, so how lucky were we to have these kind of like
incredibly
people who are both anchors of their communities. I mean, Michael is one of the main anchors of our generation, just like drawing people in. And it's just who he is. And Adrian, I feel like, was both that and then had these other dimensions to her of like, song repertoire, activism, raw public badassery in the way that like a diva vocalist could do in a way, I love you, Michael, but that like a klezmer clarinetist who has a clarinet in front of him is not going to quite do in the same way.
Yeah.
And she was just so like gigantic, and I remember at that time it was, I don't know about you, but being invited to work with her as this younger generation, which was like her goal with that record, was, I don't know if you felt special. I felt
very special. I also was I'm a little sad now thinking about it, but
always
just like I was so excited I'm sure she was excited to tour that record, and the fact that she got sick so soon afterwards was like, I that could have been just a really wonderful experience. But the little bits that we did play, it was really excellent.
Do you remember? Oh no, go ahead.
No, well, I was just gonna say I think I also the impact that Adrian had on me. I didn't really absorb it fully at that time, and maybe it's like even was after her death, and in my friendship with Sarah, her daughter, and a good close friend of both of us, Sarah Gordon. Yep. But like, just I've had, I guess I mentioned it earlier, like juggling a day job and being a parent and, having more and then less availability for music. Like the degree to which Adrian really carved a space of like being a serious musician and an activist and a parent and, and a community builder and all these, and holding all these many capacities and skills, like that, it's just as I get older, that is all the more impressive and all the more something I strive to do myself. And so it was just incredible to have that influence at that young age.
Totally. And also, just like, I want to shout out, since we don't get to talk about Adrian directly enough, it's almost like, oh, Adrian Cooper ... But do you remember, and this was probably within the last year of her life, playing an Electric Simcha Yiddish Princess double bill at the reconstituted quote-unquote knitting factory in Williamsburg or Bushwick? This would have been 2011 or 10.
I think I vaguely remember that, yes.
And there was nobody there except Adrian Cooper. And she just... And
loved
it's
it.
like, she loved it. I mean, Yiddish Princess was so funny. Those bands kind of coexisted because everybody knew about Yiddish Princess. We were doing something a little different, and also just was way, I don't know. It's just, it was but it was so funny, and I was so tickled. And like you say, some of these kinds of things tickle you more, or sort of like they sort of grow like food in your refrigerator more as time goes on, these experiences.
And they take on an import like after the fact. I guess like, wow, what a metaphor.
Totally.
Like food in your refrigerator. I'm just like thinking of all the science experiments in my fridge right now that I need to clean out.
Tell me about it. So let's fast forward a little bit, and we'll try to like throw some more stuff from the past as we can find it, because I don't want to leave it all behind, and I want to share some war stories and things like that. But let's not wait until like an hour of talking before talking about the present.
Okay.
So so just to truncate your story, and you can correct me, in somewhere between, I don't know, 2015 and 2025 when you record this new record, you like you said, you moved into a situation where you were working a day job outside of music. You became a parent. You were, like you said, you had less availability to be on the scene, to be a musician on the scene. And then in the more recent years, that sort of, the pendulum swung back the other way.
Yes, thank goodness.
And, you're still a parent, and but now you're more around. And, I love getting to see your kid at
all the
klezmer
things,
festivals. Well, especially now that I have a kid who comes to as many of the things as we can figure out. And so as you were swinging back, let's sort of start from as you're swinging back into being around. And I'll just be honest, like, I remember Michael calling me up. He's like, Avi's back in it. And we're so excited that you found your way back to us.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's very sweet.
Yeah. And, we were just, and because, with klezmer, it's like, if you can play, if you find your way in, we're going to grab you by your neck and drag your collar and drag you in. And that means that we do want you for like ever. And it's not, if you want to get out, that's your problem. But like, and, so as you're coming back in, playing some gigs, doing some stuff, maybe there was some Yiddish Princess sort of things going, and then so how did this
project come about?
What did you notice? I'm assuming you would notice that you changed a lot, or that your desires and goals were different, and how did that lead to this new project?
Yes. Okay. Well, there's so much to say here.
Of course.
So, all right. So yes, let me give a little personal history. I think, definitely a big piece of why I stopped making music was being the parent of a young child. And also, I don't want to go into too much detail, but, I was in a marriage that wasn't really working. And I think a big part of me anyway, divorce was a very good thing for me. And I think also for my ex and for we're still co-parent together. We're still very much part of each other's lives, but, getting space to really define my life for myself, that really opened up a lot. And actually, I do not recommend divorce necessarily, but I definitely recommend co-parenting. Like, it's being able to have some, to really share the responsibilities of parenting and then also step away from that is wonderful. So yeah, I found myself, around like 2002 with a lot more mental space and a lot more time. I also found myself, really grappling. Grappling's not the word, actually. I think earlier in my life, I really grappled with my own queer identity and like what that meant.
Yeah.
I think as an older person, again, post-divorce, it's just a lot less fraught. Like I'm not worried about it. It just is who I am. And that was like also a big relief that directly and indirectly, was part of this divorce experience. And then, so then also politics. I've sort of my desire to make a new project. So I really wanted to make a project that's mine, that I could put my name on. I have so many wonderful collaborations that I love that really make my life rich. And also something that frustrates me about collaborations is like they're on a collaborative timeline, as you well know. And
well, usually I'm the one who people are frustrated with when that's the case, but yes.
Yeah. And I have so many great like life affirming projects that like it's just very hard to get all the people in the room at the same time and make decisions. And I was like, I want to make a project that I can see from, start to finish, that the only person to blame is me if things go awry. And also add to this mix the reality of being a Jew after October 7th, and seeing the entire not the entire, but the vast majority of the Jewish community move very quickly and very disturbingly to the right, really move for Zionism and nationalism, and I continue to find that incredibly disturbing. So all these things are in my mind, and it's like I want a project. I'm also feeling both alienated and excited by the Jewish community. I want it to involve Yiddishkeit. I want it to involve activism, and I started. I guess I was on the hunt for material, and like, what am I going to work with? And I, came across is not the word. I've known of Irina Klefish's work for a long time. As right. We've been talking about our influences. Like Irina really influenced all of our influences, and is.
Yeah.
So like,
right.
So I started reading her work, both her prose and her poetry, and I came to Die Reise Heim, The Journey Home, and that piece just made a lot of sense to me as something to work with musically. And it checked all these boxes. Like it's, from a important queer poet, something that grapples with diaspora and here-ness and carving out, reclaiming a Jewish identity that's not that is involved with place but isn't about nationalism, and also just evocative. There's so much her words are just, they suggest so many things that there's space in that poem. A lot of her work is also very much denser. Much of her poetry is there's just a lot more density of words, but Die Reise Heim has a lot of space in it. So it's a very nice music moment.
Right, I was going to say, if you're going to try to set something, a lot of paragraphs are, you can do it, but it's not. It takes on its own thing. Yeah, no, there's a lot of room, and you can really hear that in the way that you were able to even take some, move. You were able to manipulate that space as with the settings,
2, Vidaramol, once again. Vidaramol, she tries to rise above circumstances. Too much is at stake this morning, jeden Frühmorgen, every morning, to see what can be wrenched from the unconscious, crowded darkness from Ilse Kron, of her memory. It is there, die ganze Geschichte von Volk, the entire history of the people. Vidaramol, she reaches out and tries to hold on, clinging like a drowning person to a flimsy plank. Aber der Yam is groß, but the sea is vast, und die Welt and the world are viel größer, even larger, are viel größer.
I think it makes sense. Like around 2022, we're coming out of this pandemic. Your life was also changed in this other way, you know, and then in the post October 7th world, there's no room for things. And you know, it's funny because I think about like the videos that you've made for like J-Fridge or like that. You have a thing like J-Fridge in New York that you can have a community
Juice for Racial
Economic Justice. It's sort of like and it is a big institution. Like it's a big, very active institution.
It is, and actually, you know, J-Fridge played a big role in organizing the Jewish vote that got Mamdani into power, which I know a lot of Jews are also very frustrated about.
Oh yeah,
I'm thrilled about it. You know,
it looks like fun up there. I'm going to tell you. It
Yeah.
looks like it looks like things are a little more fun than they used to be. And so Jewish vote, yeah, blah blah blah. No, it makes sense that you would sort of find your way to all of these pieces. And I was thinking that like right after October 7th, every time Irina posted on Facebook, and it's like, you know, this is one of these things you have to like put these things in perspective. It's like, oh, this pioneering queer Yiddish poet, this pioneering like peace activist also is posting on Facebook regularly. You know, a survivor of the Holocaust, of the Warsaw Ghetto,
has a
is
very
like
active social media presence. Yeah,
has a very active social media presence. Like this is the world we live in. You have to, and thank God, because it's like, whoa, these people are real, and you don't have to put her on a pedestal because she's just there. But also, I think of the two of you actually as people who are posting really reasonable, nuanced things and committing to engaging with a lot of people in ways that, you know, probably didn't end up producing anything different than it would have if you hadn't. But they always felt like, I was like, God bless, you know, it was a really good thing. So I mean, Irina is someone who I know from like winning a Dreaming in Yiddish award or some, you know, just around, and not something that this trombonist often connects with, but like, whoa, you know, just a gravitas, kind of like Adrian, but very different. But like, let's say like if you could measure this quantitatively, it was like something similar where you're just like, wow, that person is here and speaking or something like that. And, yeah, and I do think these poems are really evocative. Like you said, there is a lot of space. There's this fascinating way where she's like translating it back and forth between Yiddish and English the whole time. And even stuff like Die Zayde or Die Boba, where you're like, yeah, I think most people are going to know those, you know. But at the same time, it's just like doing it. And what was the question? What was the process of taking your, whoa, these poems are cool, this seems like an avenue for me, into getting it to the next steps and then eventually?
Yeah. So I started, I think the first, I knew I needed to ask Irina's permission. That was a big piece. And we were not, again, as you mentioned, like I know her name, like I've known her name for a long time, and I don't know if she knew who I am. I'm not really sure, but again, I'd worked with a lot of her colleagues and stuff. But before I wanted to approach her, I wanted to get a couple demos together, just to give a sense, because I think a request like that out of the blue, it's like, hey, I'd like to set your pieces. I think there might be some trepidation, like, well, what's it going to sound like? What's your approach? Are you for real? So I recorded some demos at home. Actually, this is also another fun little tidbit. Izzy, my child, was my recording engineer for some of these home recording sessions.
Yeah, go Izzy.
Izzy loves, Izzy is a very engaged recording engineer. They really enjoy pressing the buttons. Sometimes they get a little bored during the song, but that's okay. But I recorded 2 songs, and then I reached out to Irina. I wrote I wrote to a bunch of our friends asking for her contact information. Lawrence Glamber gave me her email, which is very generous, and he was very sweet at that point. And I shared the demos with him as well, and he was very encouraging.
Lauren's the best.
Yeah. So I reached out to Irina. I was like, "Hey, I'd like to set this work. Here are 2 pieces. Sort of this is the direction I'd like to go in, but let's talk details from there." And she, it took a little while for her to respond, like maybe a week or 2. And of course, during that time, I made up all sorts of wonderful stories in my head about how I had offended her, and I would, she was going to curse me to, like, how dare you touch my poems? That was not at all what was happening. She responded very generously and was very happy that I, approached her. And let's see, what did she at that time? I think she said, yes, of course, use the poems, do whatever you want. I'm going to put you in touch with my publisher at Wesleyan University Press to just work out the legal details. The only thing that I want, you have full music carte blanche to do what you want to do, but if you reproduce the poems in text, you need to reproduce them correctly, because that's also a big part of the physical formatting of the poem. That's a part of her expression and a part of the piece. So that sounded great to me. I was like, great. So I reached out to Wesleyan University Press. They were incredibly generous, and they said, yeah, go for it. You have credit us. That was the stipulation. Credit us.
Hell yeah, because you need that kind of generosity just to get to the starting line.
Yes. And then I just kept it going. I continued to write songs, these settings. The whole project, I'm talking about years going by, but this project, that from actually starting to compose to the completion, was pretty quick. I started the composition process maybe in early 2025.
Right, and we were already talking about, I think we performed them together
in June,
by the summer or something. Yeah,
June 2025, and now it's about a year later.
Yeah, pretty fast.
Yeah. So and also just worth mentioning, it's like I wanted to push myself to get something done, and so I started writing in maybe January 2025. I think I booked the first gig for March. I'm like, it's going to be done in March.
Wow. All right. Yeah. There you go.
A lot. What's on the record is quite more developed than what was at that point, but I just the starting point of the material, I really wanted to move quickly. So
yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, you have all the skills. One of the things that I always remember about you is when you did your 1 album a month thing back in 2010 or something like that. 2013. And it's like, oh, this guy can. You can do all the things that you could have done this entire thing yourself. Mm-hmm. You could have recorded the whole thing. You have all the skills, and so when you're coming up with a project, you really have skills in all aspects of the development process that you can help to see it through. And I was thinking about that while listening to the recording and remembering having played a couple of these songs with you at my upstairs at Abyssinia last June, and being like, oh yeah, that sounds like it evolved and everything. and also, you have one of the funny things in 2026 is maybe when we started this music, there was 20 years ago, there were more gigs on some level. Mm-hmm. And also the people who were gigging, or the people who were looking up to, you have Alicia Svigals on your record, and she's always busy. But 20 years ago, she was much closer to our age and was probably way busier.
Yeah.
And so I think things have opened up for this music in a way over that time period, maybe to the detriment of people like me who are trying to make a living at it. But it means that there's more space to go and try things, and everybody's available. But this scene, everybody's always been available. Some people ask for a lot of money and other people don't.
Yeah.
And so it's always worth asking. Ask us,
Yes.
And but yeah, so when I first experienced this material, it was those demos. It was you and your voice and your guitar and some charts.
Yep.
And we played them, and it was fun because we have enough shared history that at least the ones that we chose, it was super easy to turn them into something that made sense because we have enough shared history. And then when you went to record it, most of the people that you were working with that you brought on board for this were people also you have probably a similar level of shared history, or at least you're around the same age or something.
Yeah, well, this was the band that I put together for this. It's like one of these things where everyone in the band has a history with me, but they may not have a history with one another necessarily.
I mean, of course, yeah.
But I mean, there. You mentioned Alicia. Of course, like Alicia was really excited about this project from the very beginning as well. She has been, I think, she was on the very first gig. The very first gig was just me and Carmen Staff on piano. Me and Carmen Staff and Alicia, it was a little trio. And we played the material. And Irina actually came to that show. That was at Barbez, a wonderful venue in Brooklyn.
Big home. Yeah.
And, that was a show where, we got to get through it. I just need to make it happen. That's going to force me to complete the material. And Irina came to the show, and she was very excited about it. And again, that was mostly like lead sheets. And for those who aren't necessarily like, know what that means, it's like it's basically a very simple distillation of like, this is the form of the song. This is what it looks like on a sheet. It doesn't necessarily have parts written. It doesn't necessarily have all the orchestrations and stuff, but again, part of working with people I trust and people I know for a long time is I know they're going to play the right thing. And certainly in the case of Alicia, that's, she, for so much of this material, just knows what to play. And Carmen, who is not on the record, but is also, one of our friends who's been making, who's an incredible jazz pianist, but has also been making Jewish music for also well over 20 years.
Michael Winograd's fault, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Another victim of proselytization there. Also, she knows, exactly what to play. But so for this record, I called the right people, I think. So Alicia is on the record, and then also, of course, Marilyn, so Carmen was not able to make the recording session, but I felt really lucky to have Marilyn Lerner come in from Toronto, and Marilyn also, again, somebody with so much history. Also she was Marilyn's she was Adrian's partner at the time Adrian died, but also was on the record that we mentioned earlier, Enchanted. And there's this like common musical language for years of, and this whole going back and forth between jazz and klezmer and having an openness to the traditional repertoire. And then from there, who else is on the record? Zoe Gigano, another buddy of Michael Winograd's, is on bass. My friend Jessie Reagan, who is a wonderful cellist. I don't know that she does play a good amount of Jewish music. I'm not sure she's really done klezmer work before.
Yeah, but enough that I know who that is,
Yeah.
And as sort of tangentially related to the broader New York scene, and like same with, Rima
Yes.
Fand and like all these people.
And Jason,
it's like,
we got to say Jason also. Jason Nasri.
well, my old college roommate.
Really?
I mean, we were roommates before he split for New York for a year, and also we were in the same class at NEC. We started at the same time, and Jason was one of the several people who, without having to try very hard, showed me how little I knew within about 24 hours of getting to Boston.
Yeah.
When I was 22 or 20, or 2018, I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh yeah, I mean, these people, he was absolutely one of those people who just had it together at a level. He just scared the shit out of me when I was within 24 hours of arriving at school.
Uh-huh.
And then we were friends, and then we were roommates, which was, actually totally fine. And then he moved to New York, and then he was part of all these bands, and he's a parent too.
Yeah.
I think.
That's actually I lost touch with Jason for a bunch of years. And we ran into each other at our local playground, Greenwood Playground in Windsor Terrace, and that's how we reconnected for this project.
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, Jason, what you doing in November?
You need work.
You need work."
Yes.
He's like, "Yes,
Yes.
all right." So I got him for those 2 days, and
that's great. I haven't talked. I need to catch up with him. Our kids are very similar in age, within a couple months of each other.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get some networking out of the playground,
it's funny. That's another. I bring my mandolin to the playground whenever I can because that's where I get some practice in. I like.
As he's running around, it's good that it still happens at that age. It's a couple years ahead of me. Mm-hmm. So no, it's awesome. And oh man, what a drummer.
Yeah.
What a drummer, Jason. And it's so funny because I remember he was such a jazz drummer, and such a modern jazz drummer, and he was sounding so cutting edge, and then he just figured out how to do everything else too,
like electronics.
Typical New York life.
Yeah.
But good though.
Very good. Well, that was also something that I got a real kick out of. There are a handful of moments on this record where I'm throwing Alicia and Jason together, people who may not really have overlapped out in other contexts, and I'm just like, all right, improvise. And Alicia's playing a traditional doina, and Jason's following and setting up this. It's just a wonderful moment. I love it as a band leader. I'm just like, this is great. These people are playing together. It's so cool.
No, that's one of the fun things. It's like creating some kind of new dish, like a new side dish in a menu or something like that, and you're like, oh, would these flavors go together? Oh yeah, they go together.
Yes, they do.
No, it's really great. So what was the process of, I was thinking about asking you about the process of transforming these demos, or even a trio gig where you're just with lead sheets towards the sort of record. And the things that I was thinking about was, how do you let, this is a record where you've really kind of just let it all hang out. You're letting yourself as a background as a singer-songwriter and as a rock, and as a general musician of world popular music, also a musician of Jewish music, also a musician of specifically this Yiddish world music. And when you started orchestrating it out, or when you started thinking about how you wanted the record to sound, obviously somehow you struck upon something medium large, right?
Medium large, that's right.
and then how do you, when you're starting to expand things out like that, how do you start, do you use your influence? You're like, oh, this could really fit in here. And I guess this works this is true. This question also applies to the compositions themselves, but do you recognize influences after the fact? Do you just let it go? I mean, you've made so much music that you can also, really lean on yourself for your oeuvre, rather than having to say, oh, I need a 10% Elton John, moment.
I think where I was pretty intentional actually were where I wanted things to sound really traditionally Jewish, because there's a lot that's that is much more expansive. But there were moments where I'm like, this should really channel Eastern Europe, or this should really channel klezmer. And again, it was pretty easy. I just sort of leaned towards Alicia. I was like, this is please do.
Right.
But in terms of how did I arrange this stuff? So I think I whenever I arrange, I I sing a lot. Like that's actually kind of how I arrange. And like whenever I write parts for other musicians too, whenever I write like orchestrations or something, like I actually sing. I'll chart it out, using a keyboard or whatever, or using composition software. But I like want to sing the parts and sing. So it's the stuff that all comes, from it. Just my thought is that it should be singable, or it should have a little bit of a hook in it. And a lot of the arrangements are very sort of call and response. There's there's a vocal melody, and then there's like a response melody, and sort of they'll interweave a little bit. But yeah, I'm thinking a lot about melody and singability and supporting the words, and that's maybe a little vague, but
I'll just say again, like, do you notice like, I mean, obviously we all plagiarize ourselves, which is not plagiarism, but we also like, we're influenced by what we're influences, and sometimes those influences are more broad, but sometimes they're really specific. Like there's this one chord change on one of the songs that I'm like, I recognize that. I don't remember where I recognize that from. and I'm like, yeah, do you notice that? Do you notice that stuff at all? Do you notice it? Do you do it unconsciously? Do you notice it after the fact?
Yeah, I don't necessarily. Well, okay. I'm trying to anchor this in a specific composition. So let's talk specifically about number, the setting for In der Fremd. It's the 7th piece on the record.
That's a good one.
And that is a piece that uses the melody from Funtaschlich, which a lot of us probably... Us. Well, yes, us.
If you know klezmer, it's one of it's probably within the first 10 songs you're going to hear, like 20 songs you're going to hear.
Yeah, and there's a really iconic klezmatics recording that Alicia is also on. Right. The melody like bumpa ya da da. Sorry, bumpa da 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 ya da da da. So that's I guess it's sort of like a Debka beat almost, or like a Meron
on the klezmatics recording. Yeah, it's like sort of a rock and roll version of that. Yeah.
And like I don't actually remember how I combined that with the text. I started playing that in a joke, like in 3/4, so like which I did a little bit more digging after I did the composition. I realized that there actually is a Capella record where they play that as a joke. That's
right. We our brilliant ideas that come from our own souls, from the ether.
They're in fact entirely plagiarized. Thank you, Capella. But
thanks everybody. Thanks everybody. We're standing on the shoulders of our. What's cool is that we're standing on the shoulders of like people who are giants to us at one point, and then at some point we got to zoom in and realize they're just like friends and colleagues and people, and that's a privilege in itself.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so like that's one of the places where it was like that was the easiest piece for us to play,
right? Because
a duo, because it was like I was like, oh yeah, of course,
yeah. And that's actually something I've always really loved about the singer-songwriter, the folks doing singer-songwriter material in Yiddish. Like Dan Kahn. Who else? I guess Tan's the big example, but Jeff Berner as well. But there's like this lovely interplay where like a song will also. A song will then reference klezmer repertoire, and that just becomes a part of the, in a way that I don't hear that happening so much in like contemporary folk music, or maybe in other more traditional scenes, but certainly not in pop records where you just hear real traditional music, real folk melodies thrown in. So anyway, I like that made sense for me. I don't think there's like a real like specific connection to the content of the melody, or like, so from Tashlich is, what is Tashlich? Tashlich I think is like this, is the Rosh Hashanah thing where you throw away the bread, yes, bread in a moving body of water to get rid of your sins.
And these titles
also,
whether how much they have to do with the tune itself, unclear. Or clearly not, but yeah, no, it reminds me, I mean, one of the things that you said when you were talking about that call and response element to it, like that fits in really well with the poems themselves, because Irina, I mean, one thing I didn't realize until I heard the preview for the record was that Irina was going to read these poems before each performance of the song.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And there's a lot of call and response in the poems themselves because they're bouncing back between Yiddish and English.
Yes.
And there's also, and it's mostly the same words in both languages. But one of the things that I also noticed is that, and it's kind of fun that she said, well, if you reprint this, you have to reprint it exactly with the same format. But she obviously was totally cool with you moving the words all over the place in the songs themselves.
Yes.
So, and it's not like consistently like so you just, I mean, I'm assuming you're just like,
again, yeah, like I come from this, like, as much as I come from this Yiddish world, I also come from this pop world.
Sure.
Where a song needs a chorus, right? Like a song needs a hook.
Right.
So like basically I'm like reading as I was reading the poem, I'm like, well, what's, with almost every piece, not every piece. There's some pieces that are more like long form compositions that don't have a chorus, but most of the pieces have a chorus. Like I want to find, so that was part of my main motivation for moving things around, was like, I need a chorus. What really just sounds good and what's going to lend itself well to a singable hook. So that was my main motivation for chopping things up. It changes some of the intent or some of the meaning of the words potentially. Like I think there in the second song called Wieder Amol, I turn this, the hook there is Der Jam ist groß und die Welt viel größer, with like
the sea is great, but the whole world is
even larger.
Even larger,
and I
right?
think, like, in the original poem, that's towards the end of the piece. And that piece is, like... So I feel like the whole trajectory of the poem itself, so it's a single poem in 9 sections. The trajectory of the poem, it, like, really starts in this dark, stuck place. Like, it... where it feels like Irina, as the author, is just surrounded by pain and like this impossible choices, and choices that feel so hard to navigate. And I think so. This idea, this text, the sea is great and the world is even greater. It like the feeling is not one of. The feeling is like of overwhelm. It's like I can't move because I'm weighed down by these options. Like the sea feels big, but then the sea. Compare that to the world. The world's even bigger. I can't. Like I'm. Like that is the weight of history. And I think in turning that into a chorus, it changes the intent a little bit. And also my singing is like, it's not a geschrei,
you're singing.
Yeah.
Your singing is not in that mode, in that emotional register.
Yeah.
Right.
And that in some ways is actually at that time may have just been me sort of misunderstanding the intent of the poem. Like I think it's taken me a while to really digest what it means, but also it's much more hopeful and like, not necessarily expressing overwhelm, but more expressing like wonder. It's like so we're.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
Der Jam ist groß und die Welt hat viele größer. Der Jam ist groß und die Welt hat viele größer. Wieder amor, she tries to rise above circumstances. Too much is at stake this morning, every morning. Jeden Frühmorgen, she tries to see what can be wrenched from the crowded darkness. Von ihr sie kommen. It is there, die ganze Geschichte von Volk, the entire history of...
It makes me think about like the music and poetry are very, very closely related.
Mm-hmm.
They're both abstract, even though they both, are, sort of a different sliders on the spectrum, are both dealing with language, but are not bound by language in a narrative sense. And I think about But also, I mean, you put these things directly in conversation with each other on the record itself. That was what I wasn't expecting. Was that okay? So you have your version of this, but we just heard
Irina's
incredible recitation.
Yeah,
I mean, the recitation. It was like like I said, I was shocked, and I was like knocking me out. Oh, it was so good.
So I was. Part of this also so I brought we'd recorded the album in November of 2025, and then there was Yiddish New York about a month later in December of 2025, and I sat in on a couple sessions. Again, this is wonderful community with all these resources. Josh Waletsky was teaching a Lieder Schmiederei class, the song workshop, with Ada Hetko and Dan Kahn. And I think I brought in a piece from the record to share, and one of the questions I brought in was like, I'm not really sure what to do with these recitations, like, because I had recorded Irina in her home, and part of me was thinking before the record was done, is like, I need to do something with this. Like, do I underscore it? Do I do some sonic manipulation? And Josh Waletsky was very strong at that point. He's like, you know what? Please don't do anything to the recitations. Like, we want to hear her voice. And I heard that, and I was also just listening back to the recitations, and they are really, really good. She's a great performer of her work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And as much aspiration as I may have had to like, let me do something artsy fartsy with this, I thought it was good. I thought, and as you say, it's a bit of a call and response. It's like it's interchange. Like, there's the poet presenting her work as she hears it, and then this musical response, and that did come out really lovely.
I like how you tried to do a whole project where it was completely on you, and you ended up with a collaborator instead.
Yes.
Or anyway.
Well, it's interesting. It's like, it's not. I guess.
Not in a process way, but certainly in the way that people who are going to listen to this will experience the art.
But also we're saying, like, there's a 40-year gap here. She wrote this, so. We haven't even talked about this yet, the history of the record. So the history of the record is, Irina is born in Warsaw Ghetto in 1941. So a lot of her history is very... I'm going to perhaps misrepresent this. There's a lot... It's all well documented, both by herself and also in other, pieces that cover her life. So please do... listeners, please fact check me here, or just double check that. But basically, she was born in the ghetto. She was smuggled out of the ghetto, and survived the war with a Polish family. And then her mother also escaped Warsaw Ghetto, stole her daughter back, and they survived the rest of the war in hiding, and eventually found their way into Sweden, and then later in the mid to late 40s, they made their way to the Bronx, and that's where. So then Irina, so if you meet Irina today, she is she's got a very thick Bronx accent. That's
even her Yiddish is like, I'm like, this sounds like a New Yorker.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is some context. This piece, Die Weise Heim, was then written on the 40th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which also worth mentioning. Irina's father, Michal Klepfish, died in the uprising. It was one of the lead organizers, and was a bomb maker in the ghetto. He had a chemical engineering background, and learned how to make bombs, and with limited resources made a bunch of Molotov cocktails, and died very heroically in the ghetto. So Irina and her mother Rose came back for the 40th anniversary commemoration of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and that was in around that must have been 83, I think, 83 or 84. So she came,
and which means that she's like our age.
She was exactly 40. Yeah,
she's like our age in that. Yeah. That's. So that's really interesting. I wouldn't have made that connection. Yeah.
And so in this trip, she visits all these, mostly cemeteries. She visits many cemeteries. And at that point in the 80s in Poland, the cemeteries were not well, like now if you'll visit now, you'll see the Jewish cemeteries in Warsaw, and throughout the rest of the country are much better maintained because there's been a lot more attention paid, and I guess there is more Jewish attention to these cemeteries and Polish attention, and they're getting maintained. At that point, they basically Poland was still in turmoil after World War II. Jews were not ready to reclaim that history there. I think, especially after. That's maybe not the right framing, but Jews were still just in trauma, and I think there wasn't this desire to maintain any history there in Poland. So when Irina visited, she came and saw these like unmaintained, falling apart, ramshackle cemeteries that just looked like the jungle, or something. And she visited her father's grave. She visited her aunt Gina's grave. Came back, so this is another interesting point. So Irina is a poet and also a prose writer. So Dionyza Haim discusses her this whole experience in poetry. She writes about this experience also in prose. Oh, darn it! I forget the name, but there's her piece. Her book is called Dreams of an Insomniac. That's a book of prose, and I forget the name of the actual piece that describes this, but there's a piece that in prose just documents her journal entries on this visit. So it's like another wonderful insight into the experience of like visiting.
Call and response dialogue again.
Yes. So Irina then gets back home. She writes this poem over the next, weeks and months, in I guess both in the home that she shared with her partner Judy in where she actually still lives in downtown Brooklyn, and then also in their home upstate in the Hudson Valley. And I think the piece is first published in 1985. So, all right, that's a lot of backstory. But I'm coming to this then in 2025, another 40 years since its initial publication. And we joked. So we had a release concert on May 30th, like just a little over a week ago, where Irina came and she beautifully recited her poems, and it was really wonderful.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it was really.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to tour that.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, you'll see. You'll see. Maybe she wants to travel. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
And I'm sorry. No, she was. She was, she looked up how old I was. I think she wasn't quite sure, and she's joking. So you were born in 1982? That's you weren't even born. You were just 1 year old when I wrote these poems, and
eyebrows raised. It's right, but it also means that you're her age.
I'm her age when she wrote the poems.
So so these strike you at the age that she wrote them.
And it's also interesting, that's definitely worth saying. And also like my family's culture is very different than hers. Like her family is very strong, Bundes, secular, working class. My dad's family is from Poland as well, from Krakow, and a very they were sort of like modern Orthodox, Hasidish, like influenced part of this Hasidic community, but still sort of engaging in commerce and dressing more or less, contemporary, and tradespeople, like maybe business owners, so high, upper class, slightly upper class, and just a different experience of Poland and expulsion, but a lot of similar history. My grandmother also survived the war in Romania, and my grandfather survived in Siberia, in the Polish division of the Russian army. There's also there's a whole generation divide. Like I didn't experience this. This is all family lore.
Right. No. Right. Yeah.
But there's a lot of it. But her words and her experience are definitely informative for me. Yeah.
Yeah, but like you said, it's like an exploration of place without. But not in terms of the way that we were brought up to think about place, which was really around, whether it was nationalism of Israel or the United States. I mean, that was my Jewish upbringing when it came to thinking about a place. It's like playing Hatikva and the Star Spangled Banner back to back on a gig.
Yes,
which is always odd. Anyway,
yeah, and
that's another story.
Yeah.
But and then And then this sort of feeling of like, heaviness, feeling stuck. I mean, I'm just thinking of all the things you've said. Heaviness, feeling stuck, sort of writing your way through that. Cemeteries, bomb makers. I mean, just like let these things hang in the air, being in a ghetto situation under an oppressive, overwhelming force that is just dedicated to your destruction or at least immiseration.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, all right.
It's just like the stuff that strikes. I'm just saying, why not grab this? Why not let this? Why wouldn't this grab you? Why not grab this?
Yeah. There's so much there. I also don't want to leave people in the I think part of there is hopefulness in this poem, and I think that's also really a big an important part of what I want to express. Like part of where the poem resolves is in, I think, like Irina's able to sort of process all this and realizes her place is here. Air quotes here, do. And I'm not totally sure. Again, is it political? Is it personal? I think in her case, it's both. It's
yes.
But there's this sense that where we are is where we need to be, and that may be whether is that in Poland, is it in the States, is it I don't know.
Yeah, I think that if you want to take it from a political side, you could say there was work to be done right here.
Yes.
And if you want to take it from the personal side, you could say I can be whole
wherever I am
with everything that's happened right here. And this is one of the things that I think the Yiddish sort of like especially the politically aware, tradition can really take a stand on. And it's one of those things where it's like hope is a muscle. People say stuff like that. I forget whose quote that is, but it's like, this poem is a process, right? And it takes you from one place to another, and it's like a very active thing. And it's you being in the work and you being involved in the work. And I think that like fits what a great offering for today. And I was thinking, let's talk about Doikite for a second, because Doikite's having probably its biggest moment ever, at least on the general modern left, right?
Yes.
Because the person who did your artwork, Molly Crabapple, wrote this book. I saw the talk in Philly.
Excellent.
And I remember you connected with her already for some of your fundraising for this.
Yes.
And it's been really interesting for me watching even the tiny bit, and I don't really know her at all, but the evolution, I'll even just say the evolution between the time when the book came out and the first interviews that I listened to her on a couple of podcasts, to when she gave the talk in Philly. And it was like watching this show. I mean, it's not a stand-up show. It's not really a show at all, but it is still a little bit, it's a performance still. And watching the way that she talks about Doikite and Bundism and this history that she's drawn out evolve even in that short period of time where she's like, yeah, I've got political goals. This is the history that I want to use as my trampoline towards those goals rather than this is what the real thing is.
Yes.
Which is one of the things that she was doing. And of course she always shouts out Irina.
Yeah.
And, again, I just want to say within the context of some of those storytelling, a lot of it does feel far away. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The people who were the Bundists that she talks about are dead. The time when that happened is 80 to 100 years ago. But Irina's here. There is, and then this music is here. This poem is here. This process is still right with us, and we can grab it. This is one of the things that you do. What art does is it sort of gets in the stream, and now there's this and sort of drops this bridge in the stream,
and it's and this is relevant. This is where we are. There's what to learn from here,
right here, right now. No, I think it's really interesting to see. I hope that if you like that book, if you've been listening to those other podcasts, you probably check out the record because it's an artistic. It's at this point, it's a very multi-layered, very call and response, artistic endeavor. And one of the things that's great about art, even above and beyond, say, something like history, is that it's both the answer and the question, right? One of the things about, you were saying, like, I'm thinking about even how you rely on a pop trope, like finding a chorus within these poems and turning into that, but then having it set right against the poetry. And I was like a super nitpicky technical thing. I was just thinking about how the timings between the start of the music track after the poet track, and like, you have to make those decisions.
Yes.
As somebody who's producing a record, and you're like, I don't know about you, but I get really into that stuff where I'm like, no, that's like can you roll it back like a half second? Can you like really just that sense of bam, you're dropped from one space into the next. And just that all of this, all these choices at all these different tiny, like minute or grand levels are part of creating something that is generative, that like starts you on a path, or joins you on a path, or lets you join a path. I mean, and metaphors are endless because music is endless in that way.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, yeah. Thank you. That's the goal. Like, I want to create this universe that like you can drop into, and where all these minute choices create feeling and create meaning.
Yeah, totally. So as somebody, we can start sort of moving towards a close, but as somebody who's like, the pendulum swung back the other way in your life, and you're like firmly ensconced in managing all these different roles, one of them now being like a musician, and you've got other projects that are really active right now, like your one with Basia Schechter, and I heard Yiddish Princess might or might not have something new coming someday soon.
That's true. We have stuff.
And like, yeah, so you're connected to activism like J-Fridge. You're living in New York in this really interesting, fascinating time of Zoran, the reign of socialism, and Doikite's hip. It's like, how are you relating to all this stuff, and it's like two things. It's like, what can people watch out for, and like what are you looking for right now? As an artist, I guess, primarily, but who cares?
I want to continue. Okay, I want to go in all the directions. On the one hand, I want to like, what I love about this project is that it is so. I mentioned like the timeline is really just about what I was able to pull off, but also the performance is so flexible. Like, I did a performance, just me and Alicia duo, and that was a wonderful performance. I've performed it quite a bit solo, and like, I love that experience too. And it's actually really, as we started this conversation talking about like being technical musicians, and like as a solo musician performer, that is also really fun and challenging, of like stretching my guitar chops and singing, and just like seeing what can I create with just me. So that's wonderful. But then also, I want to bring this band to the world, and bring this music to festivals that can really, that can support a large ensemble, or medium large ensemble.
Yeah.
But so, I want to be playing and singing and, and performing more, but I'm also like, looking for, I want to find other work that really hits this sweet spot of like work rooted in our culture, for me right now, that is, that's this Yiddish culture. This is this Eastern European lineage, but that also feels very contemporary, and is also really rooted to the work and the activism we need to do right now, specifically, in terms of Israel-Palestine peace, and in terms of peace in where we live, in the places we live, access to healthcare, access to all these really crucial and embattled things that should be rights, that are in fact, really getting challenged by it. Anyway, I feel like art and performance hopefully can be a part of advocacy for these things, and and I want to really attempt to make my work and voice as an artist try to fit into these movements and promote these movements. So, I've had an interesting experience where I performed long story short, it's like, I'm curious also, like, what work do I, as an activist, what can I do with this music? And
That's a great question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I don't know.
because they're like they're like the same, but they're also totally not the same. Like they it's like, I don't know. It's like being on one side of the highway versus the other side. Like, you know, if there's like a cars and trucks or like a cars only, like the New Jersey Turnpike that I drive all the time, you know, it's like that. But you're like, yeah, we're going to the same place, but like we're not together right now. And I think it is really interesting what music can do, what activism can use music for, and maybe what activism should use music for. I'll give a really quick example that I probably gave before, which was one of my favorite uses of music theory or, you know, technical musical knowledge, which was I was part of an action last summer, and I put together a band, and we were protesting a weapons manufacturer in Philly that had a sort of secret office somewhere. And we're out there, and they were doing this song, and every, maybe, I don't know, it must have been every 10 seconds, because it was also when the cops were coming and the arrests were starting to happen. Every 10 seconds, the singers were switching, or like every less than a minute for sure.
Was
per
that
singer.
by design,
And
or like that was
I don't know what.
strategic?
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what the formatting was causing that. I think some of it was people resting their voices. That's what I remember is in my head. But it meant that the key of the song was changing every minute or less.
Wow.
And it was me and another person, and everybody in the band was like,
We're gonna do our best.
the drummers were fine. No. Actually, everybody in the band who was playing horn had strong enough pitch recognition to be able to follow.
That's awesome.
Which was just like a coincidence. But it also was like, wow, this is the first time that like perfect pitch actually seemed like for the people, you know? And it's sort of like, it was just this funny realization where like, oh, these skills that seem rarefied, because maybe they are a little rare, or like elitist because, you know, that's what rarefied skills often take on. It's like, oh no, these are important, useful skills for keeping the energy sky high for this action, you know? And it's like, that was just one example for me where it was like, oh, this is what musicality, in this case, this is what musicality can do for activism, which is not something people ever really are able to think about all the time.
So I've been involved in, you know, coincident with this album is a project that I've been involved with Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. We've been putting together a songbook, you know, a movement songbook,
right, that
is actually going to be released on July 1st. I love the title. It's called Singing in Public, Songs to Carry Our Movement. But I just love the idea that singing in public as action, like this is political action, which I think, you know, if you're representing a minority culture and you're singing out, you know, that is in fact activism. We are existing. We are pushing against the, you know, hegemony of the state. And anyway,
the forces of erasure and flattening.
And a big piece of that songbook project was about discovering, you know, we wanted to represent many Jewish diasporic languages. So we have Yiddish represented, we have Ladino represented, we have Judeo-Arabic represented, and we really tried to reach to our you know, to the community musicians who represent each of these different movements and get their takes on the songbook and really get their, you know, them to say, you know, to write pieces if they want to sort of introduce the songs. And so there's a piece like producing the actual physical book, but then also there's been the practice of bringing this into different actions. We also had, as you were describing your experience, we had a very similar action during Passover. There's a Seder in the streets that Jay Fridge organized. I wonder if it's the same weapons manufacturer that we marched to.
Maybe
we marched to the offices of Palantir, and we're camped out.
Somebody else, I forget the name. It was localer. Surprise. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, we were. It was the first time that this cohort of song leaders that we've been organizing together and writing this book for, you know, close to a year, we came together to really co-lead an action together. And that was really very cool because there was a lot of trading of singing and rotations. Like no one single person got burnt out. There's a lot of facilitation with the ensemble. We also had a brass band that was like guiding us and supporting us. And we had this wonderful repertoire that we've been, you know, developing, and like we really were able to represent so much. It was great to, you know, you've done. Did you interview Ira Temple? You must have interviewed Ira Temple here.
Oh yeah.
There's also, I love like the piece that he developed way back with Sibelev, with they saying La musique überleben, like we will outlive them.
Yeah.
Setting it to the melody of La musique überleben, and like we were able to bring that into the streets, and and layer that with other. Anyway, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. I don't know. Yeah, and I think it's. This is also, I think, it was a wonderful moment. It was also opposing this horrific company where I don't know that anything has changed. Like Palantir is still funded and is still.
I mean, it's going to take more than one action.
And it's like these are ongoing. This is like perpetual work, but I guess also hopefully this is something that art can do, is like give us this joy in these moments of hell to continue. Yeah.
Well, it's it reminds me of when Zoran won, and I think I wrote something to friends, and I'm trying to avoid social media for parenting energy reasons, but like I think I wrote was like, man, I hope everybody gets some rest because because the fight's just getting rolling, and it sucks because like it takes so much energy to put together a songbook to then use for an action that takes so much energy and then is just going to have to, keep going.
And being used over and over.
So, but I do think it's like, what these resources and then these practices, right? Like the practice of connecting people, the practice of bringing diasporic cultures together in a maybe new kind of solidarity that, has historical precedents or potential historical precedents, but also has historical ruptures and, oppressions and all that other stuff. And like, doing something new with something old, doing something old with something now, like it's how we can stay rested and stay fueled and stay excited and also stay, like you said, hopeful and open and gives people a pathway to move from a more stuck place to a more unstuck, to a less stuck place, because that's the stuck place is one of the things that drags everything down. For all of this stuff.
And also I think just worth saying, are you trying to rap? Also, I know. But I was gonna,
see, you are good at this.
Well, I do. I think like one of the questions I asked a few minutes ago is like, how can we put this music to work, and like what activism does the music enable? I think like this. I think the Jewish community is there is a lot of work that needs to happen to move the Jewish community to wholeheartedly support these values that we've been talking about of collective action, of intersectional justice for and to prioritize our needs alongside and co-equal with the needs of the many communities we live with. And I think that like presenting our music in Jewish spaces, I think what I've been learning and hopefully am attempting to do is like the Jews, if there's anything I can do, it is hopefully get my fellow Jews to start to co-organize with more groups and to like move us slightly farther left and be openness to view ourselves as part of a coalition of minorities, and that's something that it's very small, but like that is something I feel fairly well equipped to do in Jewish spaces, is like present our history, present the history of leftist organizing, the history of Doikite, and show that is valuable. And if there are Jews who are sort of are on the border of like, how do I get engaged with local activism, sort of show them that there is precedent and possibility here, and move this community slightly left, slightly more active. And
this could be your story, right? Like you could be part of this story, or this could already be your story, And I think that one of the greatest things about doing it the way that we do it is we're really specific about what our thing is, our Jewish thing is, and the more specific we get about like not what klezmer is supposed to be, but what klezmer is, for instance, or what Yiddish song is, the better. It's easier for people, especially outside of the Jewish community, to see what it is. Our friend Mark Rubin always says, if you're showing up to a potluck, do you show up empty-handed, or do you show up with a dish that, maybe people have never eaten before, but they're like, well, that's a dish. Like that's something that this person, that's an offer. This person, that person came with a real offering, and maybe I don't like it, but that's a real offering. It's not like chips. It's like you showed up with something. That's right. You showed up with something. Anyway, yeah. So you're showing up with a whole lot of offerings for all of us these days, and I do think that is probably a good place to wrap. So, Die Reise Heim, that's the album. The songbook's coming out. There's a lot more music that is on the horizon, and Avi's doing a good job on social media, so you'll hear about it. And more power to you. That's a different conversation.
Thank you,
but yeah, and thanks for coming on here.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Really a pleasure.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yazoi, she wonders, should I speak? Welche Wörter, which words should I use? In der Fremd, among strangers.
Well, that was my conversation with Avi Fox-Rosen. I had such a good time doing this with Avi because, the two of us have our own lives, and we've always had our own lives as musicians, as guys in this music. And, let's just say we haven't had a chance to really get into it like this for a really long time. And I think that you could hear how much that meant to me, and I think to Avi too. So it was just really fun, and also really great to talk about his great new music, Die Reise Heim, The Journey Home, a Heim, And, if you don't know about Irina, keep looking her up, learn more about that story. Whew. So that's it for our A series, but there'll always be more of the trenches and all the people who make this Yiddish cultural world and beyond so incredibly special and vibrant and amazing. I hope I get to talk to Irina herself sometime. That would be really cool. In the meantime, support us. You know how to do it. And stay tuned. We got more episodes coming at you this summer. So, if you're on the East Coast or anywhere else that's ridiculously hot, stay cool. If you're coming to Kles Cummington, I'll see you there. And otherwise, and including, have a good Shabbos.
Which words should I use? In der Fremd, among strangers. She remembers the lectures, the lessons, die Prinzipien, the principles und sie schweigt. Ja da 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 da